live here in just a second. Get the link up on Facebook. And on Twitter. All right, getting started in just a second. All right, everyone, good Saturday morning. It is November 20th, 2021. Apologies for the lack of videos the past couple of days. On weekdays, I have a very short window in between when my day job ends and the evening games start. But if you've been following me on Twitter, you can always get all of my plays for the day at right down here on the bar here at Live One Sports. And last night we had a really good night. James Madison and George Mason flew under the total. The Clippers dominated in the first half, and the Avalanche utterly obliterated the Kraken, giving us a 3-1 night. We are at 12-7 for the week, but a little over plus 6 units with all the hockey puck lines that are quickly becoming really my best value. So much to cover today, as you can see right over here. Sorry for the microphone there. We've got week 12 of college football, college hoops tournaments starting, NHL and UFC Fight Night to go over. Let's get right to it, and we're going to start with Boston College and Florida State. The Eagles have been one of the sneakiest good teams in college football this year, and their record unfortunately just doesn't reflect it. If Phil Jurkovich hadn't gotten hurt right at the critical moment as conference play was starting, I think this is the second place team in the Atlantic Division this year. Jurkovich is averaging 12.4 yards per pass attempt, completing 64% of his throws. It's just a different team with him on the field. Florida State's secondary gets shredded through the air by even halfway competent quarterbacks. They gave up 316 yards passing to Miami, 314 to NC State, 264 to Louisville, and 366 to Notre Dame. Jurkovich leading this Eagles offense is on par with, if not better than, all four of those squads, I think. Meanwhile, the Eagles have a top 25 defense and a secondary that's number 3 in the country in fewest passing yards allowed per game. Now, every time I see a stat like that, I take a look at, is that a case where just the teams are running on them all the time? And this is another case against that, yeah. Teams run 36 times against them per game on average against 24 pass attempts. They have some success running, but even so, the Seminoles don't have a passing game to speak of anyway, so yeah, expect a ton of running from Florida State today. Jashawn Corbin should see a ton of action. The Seminoles are going on the road to Boston today. If you live in the Northeast, we just had a major cold snap. It's going to be 38 degrees at kickoff, not conditions these Seminole players are used to in general, certainly not ones they ever typically have to play in. I like the home field advantage, and I like Jurkovich under center to make all of the difference in the world today. Boston College wins this one by a touchdown, I think. So, yeah, I'm going to lay the -1.5 with them this afternoon for sure. Moving over to the Big Ten, Rutgers and Penn State, 12 p.m. kickoff. Rutgers did hang 38 points on Indiana last week, but much like that Michigan State game last year and the Temple game earlier this year that they played, so much of that came on the strength of defensive turnovers, giving them short fields. Rutgers is not a powerhouse offense, and no one would ever mistake them for one. Since Rutgers entered the Big Ten in 2014, very interesting stat here, they have scored a grand total of just 39 points in their 7 games against Penn State. That is less than 6 points per game over that stretch. Penn State is coming off a really heartbreaking 21-17 loss at home against Michigan last Saturday. This is not the typical James Franklin run-up-the-score Penn State program right now. They're playing very tight, low-scoring football, and that'll suit the style Rutgers enjoys just fine. No one is going crazy on Rutgers through the air this season. It's held all 10 of its opponents to fewer than 20 pass completions. Now, that includes Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State, 3 teams that are vying for the national championship right now. It's crazy when you think about it, how improved on defense Rutgers is since Greg Schiano came back. Look for much of this contest to be played on the ground. The clock's going to keep moving, get chewed up a lot with a whole lot of running plays. The final score is going to be kept well under the total of 47, so that's what I'm taking today. Rutgers, Penn State, under 47. So speaking of national title contenders, or at least teams that hope to be, the one thing and only one thing matters to Cincinnati in their final home game of the season today. A big statement win. And they have the perfect situation to do it in today against a defense that has the consistency of wet tissue paper. SMU is 86 in yards per game allowed, 123rd in passing yards, 65th in the country in points per game allowed, and 89th in the country in generating defensive turnovers. Desmond Ridder is going to be able to shred the Mustangs secondary today and score at will. Cincinnati is a team that can put up totals in the low 40s without much difficulty when they need to, and they know that they need to today. This is a team with playoff aspirations, and the selection committee has made it very clear that it will use any excuse it possibly can to not allow a G5 team in no matter what. I think if Alabama winds up with 2 losses, they're still going to put Alabama in the playoffs, depending on how everything else shakes out. The Bearcats need to not give them an excuse. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, this, I think, is the reason the Bearcats are getting left out. Their defense has not been doing its part here in the backstretch. They gave up 20 to a bad Navy team, 20 to Tulsa, and 28 to a really bad South Florida team. This was arguably the best defense, or maybe one of the top 3 defenses in the country in the first half of the year. And now it looks like they're just running out of gas, playing with less energy. And SMU is an offense the likes of which they have not seen all year. Top 10 in points per game, yards per game, and third down conversion rates. The lowest total SMU has scored all year was 25 against Memphis. And if their offensive line can hold off even a fraction of Cincinnati's pass rush up front, Tanner Mordecai should have himself another really good day. Bearcats are going to have to bring everything they have on defense to avoid this becoming a shootout, and with the way they've been playing lately, I don't know that they can. I like Cincinnati to hang 42 on the SMU defense today, and I think SMU's offense gets you the rest of the way to the total. Give me the over 66.5 points today on this game. So moving back over to the Big Ten, Michigan and Maryland after a mid-afternoon game today. I really don't like Michigan, particularly since Jim Harbaugh took over the program, but even I have to tip my cap to the fact that this is an absolutely elite level defense they have. Top 10 in the nation in yards allowed, passing yards allowed, and points allowed per game. Yes, they play in the Big Ten where there's not a whole ton of offense, but it's still really impressive nonetheless. Maryland's a program that's been in a downward spiral since Big Ten conference play started. They've lost 5 out of 7 Big Ten games by an average margin of 26 points. Their stat-padding quarterback, Talia Tagovailoa, has folded up like a cheap tent against this conference's superior defense, chucked up 9 interceptions in those 5 losses. Now he's missing one of his chief targets in Marcus Fleming, who's done for the season. I think Michigan brings the heat all day with that terrifying edge-rushing duo of David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson, both future NFL draft picks for sure. They're going to keep Maryland's total nice and low. The total of this game is 57.5 now, so really you got to wonder about Michigan's offensive output. Well, I mean, this is a run-first team that hasn't exactly beat up on the mid-tier and bottom-tier teams of the Big Ten. The totals of the games finished at 33 against Rutgers, 40 against Northwestern, and 36 against Indiana. All 3 games were look-ahead spots for Michigan. Michigan played Rutgers right before the Wisconsin game, Northwestern right before the Michigan State game, and Indiana right before the Penn State game. Now the Wolverines play. The Wolverines are playing Maryland today ahead of that big game against Ohio State next week. Jim Harbaugh is a notorious underachiever who does not get his teams up to play in spots like these. And as we all know, Ohio State is his white whale. He's not going balls out today. He's going to be happy with a nice, easy 31-13 win. Might even rest the starters late if the game's well in hand in the fourth quarter. He's looking ahead to Ohio State next week. Take the under 57.5 points today. So over to the Big 12. And speaking of great defenses, Oklahoma State is the best defensive team in the Big 12 by a country mile. And maybe with the exception of Georgia and Wisconsin, they might be the best run defense in the country. Red Raiders are not going to be able to run on this team today, period. So the question is if the Cowboys can slow down Texas Tech's top 15 passing attack. Oklahoma State is better than most teams in the Big 12 against it, and they're going to have a big advantage in that I believe they're going to be able to bring a lot of pressure up front. Texas Tech is, despite their insane stats on offense, they have been one of the worst pass protection teams in the country this season. Really, the only reason their offensive stats are as high as they are is, well, it's the Big 12. Almost no one actually plays defense. The Cowboys are going to be a nightmare for them. Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator, his blitz packages can come from anywhere, and it shows 17 different Cowboys have recorded a sack this year. And I know this is a look-ahead spot. Again, we were talking about that earlier. I know this is a look-ahead spot for the Cowboys with a big Bedlam Bell game against Oklahoma next week. But I really don't think it matters. Anytime you get a prototypical Big 12 team like Texas Tech, all offense and no defense, and you put them up against a team that actually plays defense, they invariably get spanked. Every time. Oklahoma State wins this one by 2 touchdowns easily. I'm laying the 9.5 points with them tonight. So that does it for college football. Now let's talk college hoops. Tournament play is beginning today for a lot of teams. And Villanova versus Tennessee, easily the game of the week in college football. 2 prolific offenses that are about to get a major, major test. Tennessee currently ranks 6th this season in defensive efficiency, and they're 3rd in steals through 2 games. Now, I'll grant you those were gimme tune-up games against Tennessee Martin and East Tennessee State. But their defense was rock solid in both games anyway, and we saw full well what this team could do to bottle up better competition last year. Villanova isn't as solid on them on the defensive side of the ball, but Jay Wright's offense is Jay Wright's offense. It's a Seiko watch of military precision that holds the ball for a long time, takes their time, sets up the perfect looks for its shooters. Both teams are going to be looking to play this game extremely tight and physical. I don't think you see too much sloppiness on either side. Villanova is going to slow the game's tempo down. Tennessee is going to play stout defense. Take the under 140 in this game. I think this is a game that comes down to the very end. I think it's low scoring, and I think it goes under the total here. So then moving over to Baylor versus Stanford. The defending national champs certainly have not lost a step despite losing their top 3 scorers to graduation in the draft, did they? The Bears just said, Minnesota, yeah, we'll take your top scorer. Come on, over here, thanks. Georgetown, yeah, we're going to take your top assist guy. Over here, thanks. That's the sort of thing that you can do when you win a national title. Baylor's right back to averaging close to 90 points a game, and they bowled over 3 hopelessly outmatched opponents in Incarnate Word, Nicholls State, and Central Arkansas to start the season. Today, they get their first test in Stanford, who followed up an embarrassing early season loss to Santa Clara with easy wins over San Jose State and Valparaiso. I can never pronounce that school correctly. Stanford, though they've been underwhelming and underachieving so far, 1-3 against the spread, they still do have a decent mid-tier offense that's absolutely loaded with size. They've got a 6'7" shooting guard, a 6'9" small forward, and a 7'1" center. The Cardinal can put points up on the board as long as they can take care of the ball. And as good as this Bears defense is, Stanford should at least be able to get into the low 60s against them based on that size alone. 62 or 63. I mean, Incarnate Word and Nicholls State both put up 60 against them, and Stanford's offense is certainly superior. So the question becomes, can Baylor put up 77 or 78 to get up to the total of 139.5? And the answer would be most emphatically yes. If Santa Clara can put up 88 against Stanford, abso-freaking-lutely Baylor can put up that kind of total. I expect a total in the high 140s in this game. I'm absolutely taking the over 139.5. Nothing to do in the NBA today. There's a lot of games on the board, but none of those angles look particularly profitable to me. I'm going to take a look over at the NHL now, and the game that I'm looking at tonight is the Predators and the Canadiens. You talk about 2 teams headed in completely opposite directions. It's these 2. The Predators have won 7 out of their last 10 after starting the season 2-4. Montreal, as we've talked about, is absolutely nothing without Carey Price to put the team on his back. The Habs have lost 4 in a row and 7 out of their last 8. Sam Montembeault is in goal for them tonight after Caden Primal got completely humiliated by the Penguins in a 6-0 defeat. Montembeault has a horrific GAA of 3.71 and a save percentage below 900. Juice Saros is in goal for Nashville, has only given up more than 2 goals in 1 out of his last 10 starts. This one's a no-brainer for me. Take the Predators on the money line for a very good price that you can get right now at -125. So then UFC Fight Night, the last action before the Thanksgiving break. We've got a loaded card tonight. 12 fights, headlined by Miesha Tate. But the fight that I'm looking at tonight is Lutz and Sabatini. This is being billed as your classic striker versus grappler match, but I really don't get that. Yes, Lutz is primarily a striker, but he comes from a wrestling background. He's just fine getting out of trouble when he's on the mat. Moreover, I'd make Lutz the far more well-rounded fighter of the 2 men. Sabatini, he's a submission specialist. Certainly not the best takedown guy I've ever seen. He's not particularly durable. His cardio was a big problem in his fight against Tristan Connolly. If Sabatini's going to win this fight, he's going to have to do it early. You might want to live bet this one if it goes past the first round and Sabatini hasn't gotten Lutz in any kind of trouble. I'd take Lutz on the money line for sure. He could win with a knockout or on points. As it stands, I'm taking him on the money line ahead of time this afternoon. It's basically a pick'em. You can get Lutz at -105 right now. I think Sabatini's a one-dimensional fighter, and Lutz has way more paths to victory. So yeah, betting Lutz to win. Nice simple bet to close out this. What do we got here? 9-play bit of action that we've got going on today. So that is it. Another loaded Saturday for us. Everyone bet safe, stay safe. Follow us on Twitter, as stated before, at Live One Sports. Check us out on Roku and Fire TV at the Live Ones. Have yourselves a great Saturday, and I will see you tomorrow.